quick reminder, remember that our test is coming up here, it's either Tuesday or Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday of next week, but I'll tell you for sure on Monday what I decide, okay? But the test will have stuff like this on it. Let's actually just do these three. One's add, where you can just drop the parentheses. One is subtract, where you got to remember to distribute that and then combine like terms. Then there's the multiply kind. And I'm just going to do the first term for you to remind you. That'll be 12x to the 10th. When you have powers like that that are multiplied, then the power goes up. The powers on these other ones, they don't change at all because you're only adding things that have like terms. All right, try to get those three answers, and then I'll tell you what we're doing for new stuff for today. All right, just to make sure you're started on the right foot here, that and that are like terms. So you can just put them together, and you get 4 and 3 makes 7, x to the 5th. This doesn't have anything alike with it, so I just put it there. And last but not least, minus 6. There's nothing alike to it, so I just write it like that. There we go. Raise your hand if you had that one right. That's most of you. Good. Next one. That's negative 4x to the 5th, and that's positive 6. Before I forget, I'm just going to put a positive 6 at the end, because that's the most common mistake is kids write negative 6, because they just forget to distribute this negative, and two negatives multiplied make that, because this is like a negative 1 being multiplied in, just to make sure you get that. It's like a negative 1 right there, times the negative 6 makes it positive 6. Okay, and then this negative 4x to the 5th goes with the 3x to the 5th and makes negative 1x to the 5th. You don't have to say 1, just negative x to the 5th would have been fine. That 4x to the 3rd has nothing else like it. 4x to the 3rd. And that is your final answer for the second one. Then the multiply one comes along, and you probably aren't even done with that one yet because this got so many parts. I would have done it like this, and then I would have taken this and done these two. Then you have to put like terms together. Lots of chances to mess that one up. Not going to lie, this first test is not easy. I actually recommended that we start with a different unit because it's kind of depressing if you have a tough test your first test. But the decision was made by the higher algebra team that they wanted to do this first, even if it's going to be one of our harder tests. Okay, so be aware. This isn't, there's a lot of chances to mess this up. This is a hard unit just because of the algebra. How many of you have got all 4 parts and you've all combined the like terms? Raise your hand if you are done with this. Okay. Not enough people done yet. I'm going to pause. Okay, let's see how you did. 3x to the 5th times this negative 6 makes negative 18 x to the 5th. Then this 4x to the 3rd times this 4x to the 5th makes 16, and it's a positive because they're both positives. 16 x to the, when you're multiplying, you add the powers. X to the 8th. And last but not least, this times this. So the 4x to the 3rd times negative 6 is negative 24 x to the 3rd. There weren't any like terms. Now the only thing that's like tricky about this is you have to have them in order from the biggest power to the smallest power. Did you remember that? This is the first one, but this should be the second one. So these two should switch places. So I'm going to rewrite that as my final answer. 12x to the 10 plus 16x to the 8th minus 18x to the 5th, and this to the 3rd power is last, minus 24x to the 3rd. I know from experience that there's a lot of people that would have made a mistake in there somewhere. Did anybody pull it off and get that exact thing? Raise your hand, please, if you actually got this right. Okay. All right. Miss C, did you get it right or not? Okay, thank you for being honest. All right. So, is there any questions that you guys have? Because if you don't get part of this, like, how the heck did you get 18x to the fifth or whatever? This would be a great time to ask. All right. Then, I need to teach you about complicated factoring. But first, let's remember how to do regular factoring. X squared minus 4. Do you remember how this breaks into two things? I didn't teach, well, in fact, I taught 0 of you last semester. But I know that your teacher taught you to factor these because you had tests on it. We all share the same exact tests. That's one thing you can know about your higher algebra class is the test I give you, same exact test as other people. The only thing we'll do is change the numbers sometimes. Like if I had to the second, they might put it to the third or whatever, so that the answers won't be exactly the same for cheating purposes. But your tests basically are on the same stuff. Okay, so I know you were learning this in your other class. Who had x plus 2 and x minus 2? Okay. If you didn't, look at it and see what I did. I did the square root of this, and I did the square root of this. And there's a plus and a minus. All right, let's make sure you got that. X squared minus 25, don't say it, write it. It should be like easy peasy. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to turn and show it to the person that I pair you with. I'm going to pause while I'm setting people up. Seems like most people are pretty confident here. This is x plus 5 and x minus 5. Raise your hand if you had it right. Okay, cool. Next one. A little more complicated. X squared minus 6x minus 7. Parenthesis, parenthesis, like two sets of parentheses. Now, I'm going to act like you never learned this before, and I'm just going to explain how I taught it. I said start with x and x. It's a 3-step process. Then I say start with the negatives. And I know some people go the numbers next. I don't think so. I think you have to figure out whether it's negative, negative, or positive, positive, or one of them's negative and one of them's positive. Okay? Do you get that the last number is negative? That means only one of these can be negative. So make one of them negative. It does not matter which one. Do you get, I know it's a plus and a minus, because whatever these two question marks are, one has to be negative so that the last number is negative. Okay, so if there's a negative at the end, there's only one negative. Does that make sense to you? Okay, so now you can know there's one positive and one negative. Okay, then last, it's really easy. It multiplies to negative 7. So it has to be a 7 and a 1. But you might be like, well, is it a 7 and a 1 or is it a 1 and a 7? Because if I put the 1 here and the 7 here, they'd be different. You're right. They would be different. So then you just check and see, did I get it right? And how do you check? This is the most important thing, is you check by multiplying it out to see if it worked. X times x, x squared, yay. 7 times negative 1, negative 7, yay. Now the hardest part though is in the FOIL, the outside and the inside. I'm making them red here. That makes 7x and negative 1x. That adds up to positive 6x. See how I actually wanted negative 6x? If you ever get the opposite of what you wanted, then you just switch the signs, not the numbers, the signs. I'm telling you this for a reason. I know some of you are going to be like, I can switch the numbers if I want to. Yeah, but you're going to get it wrong later when they're more complicated. Trust me, if you get the opposite of what you wanted, see, I got positive 6x, just switch the signs. If you get the opposite of what you want, switch the signs. If you ever get something completely different than you wanted, then you switch the numbers, but not the signs. It's a really good system. All right, so let's try another one. X squared, oh wait, I shouldn't put parentheses yet. X squared minus 3x minus 4. Make two sets of parentheses. 3-step process. X and x. Does it need two pluses? No. Does it need two minuses? Here's why it doesn't need two minuses. If it had two negatives, that would come out positive. So it can't be two minuses. It has to be a plus and a minus. Okay, and last but not least is the 4. Well, I could put a 2 and a 2. I know that that's not going to make a negative 3 in the middle, so I'm going to choose the other way to make a 4, which is a 4 and a 1. How do you check if you got it right? First, x squared. Last, negative 4. So yay, I'm on track. But it's always about the outside and the inside. 4x and negative 1x. That makes a total of 3x, and I wanted negative 3x. Do you remember what I just told you? If you ever get the opposite of what you wanted, then you switch the signs. So this becomes minus, this becomes plus, and now I've got it right. This is so critical. If we had a whole test on this, okay, so I know you knew it, but it was a few weeks ago. I gotta make sure you get this. So I'm gonna give you A, B, and C, 3 more factoring problems, and I need to know how many of you get 1 out of 3, or 2 out of 3, or 3 out of 3, okay? Hopefully nobody fails all 3. A, B, C. You need to know this. I'm telling you, if there is only one thing you learn this entire semester, factoring should be it. It's going to be on your next test, and it's going to be in pre-calc when you get there. Factoring is so incredibly important. All right, x squared minus 81 is your first one to factor. Your second one is x squared plus 3x plus 2. And your last one is x squared plus 9x, nope, minus 9x, sorry, plus 9. Minus 6x, sorry. X squared minus 6x plus 9. There we go. Those 3 all factor. And what I'm teaching you today is more complicated than this, but it builds on it. Like if you can't do this, there's no way you can do that. It'd be like if a baseball player has never even hit the ball, then teaching them how to try to swing for a home run is useless. You gotta be able to do the basics first. I'm going to pause. You try to factor these 3. Okay. Not sure you guys realize how important this is. X plus 9, X minus 9. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Good. Next one. X plus 2, X plus 1. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, last but not least, X and X. And what did I say? 3-step process. Do you get, since there is a negative, there has to be at least one negative. Now I go, should it be 2 negatives? Or should it be a positive and a negative? Well, this number's positive. That means you'd need 2 negatives to multiply together to make 9. That was negative 3 and negative 3. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, awesome. Good. Then I feel like you are on track for basic factoring, which is so critical because, watch out, hold on to your hat. This is where you get the new stuff you've never seen before, and it's kind of complicated. Okay, so write this down. X to the third plus 2x squared plus 4x plus 8. By the end of the hour, this will be an easy one. Now, how on earth do you factor that? Well, there was an old saying called divide and conquer. One of the most famous generals in the world, he said that was his secret to success. He would divide the other country and conquer it. And if he could just do like half the country, if he could take on just half the country, then his whole forces could go against half of their forces and he'd have a win for sure. So how do you get to attack only half the country? Well, you fake them out. And I'll give you this example. When we were landing in World War II, they knew we were going to either land here or here. and they didn't know for sure which one it was. The Nazis were trying to protect the beaches because they knew we were going to have to land all of our guys and they'd be able to pick us off easily as we ran up the beach. We faked to the north, but it was so convincing that Hitler had his best forces up here because he knew that if he could just wipe us out when we first came in, he wins the whole war. It was going to be over right there. But we actually went here to Normandy. And again, his best forces weren't there, but he had forces there. And as it was, a high percentage of the people that ran up that beach got mowed down. Just massive numbers of people got killed right there. If we hadn't faked to the north, though, and if he had had all these forces down here, none of our guys would have made it. Every American would have got killed that day. Okay, so we divided up Hitler's forces in half, and we ended up winning over there because of that move where we faked to the north and we actually went to the south. All right, so this is called divide and conquer. I want you to draw a squiggly line because we don't want you to think it's like a real, like absolute value sign or something. A squiggly line, and just split your problem in half. What you do is you factor the first part as if the second part doesn't even exist. You just look at this and you go, what can I factor out of that? Do you get they both have an x squared in them? Put a parenthesis after the x squared and let's see if you can do this. They both have an x squared in them. And what's left is an x plus, what do you think? 2 is correct. Now, for those that have trouble with this, you just divide this by x squared and you divide this by x squared. And you see how that shows you what's left? Because see, these two x squares will cancel. It leaves you at 2. And 2 of the 3 x's cancel, and that leaves you an x. That's how you factor it one piece at a time. I just factored the left side. Now, for those of you that weren't able to do that last one, everybody should be able to factor this one. What comes out of both of those? 4. What's left in the parenthesis? Well, you divide this by 4 and you divide that by 4, and it'll tell you what to put in the parenthesis. Did you have x plus 2? Now, this is the part. Those were just 2 simple little factoring problems. This is the part that puts it all together and makes you able to factor something really complicated. Do you think it's a coincidence that this x plus 2 and this x plus 2 are exactly the same? It's not a coincidence. Because now they are the common factor. I'm going to just make sure you get this. This and this both have a common factor again of x plus 2. So I take that out and I put it in front. And I'm, once again, factoring is really dividing by that. And do you get when I divide both of these by x plus 2? I get the x squared plus 4 at the end. And that's it, boys and girls. That's your first factor by grouping. Final answer, x plus 2 and x squared plus 4. Why don't I keep factoring? Because you can't factor this kind. If that had been a minus, then you absolutely could have factored it again. You would have been able to factor this again, and that's going to happen on your test. A lot of times, you get all that work done, and you get it to this, and then you got to factor it again. But this one's a plus, and they never work. Yes?
Would it be the same if you switch them around, like the x?
Yes. Yes. Now, the only reason I put them in front is because, you know, when you factor out the common factor, you usually put it in front. So that x plus 2 was the common factor. She's just asking, or sorry, I am picturing that you are trying to ask that whether that x plus 2 should be in the front or at the back, and it can be in either spot, and I don't care. All right, so are you ready? One more. See if you got this. X to the third minus 4x squared plus 2x minus 8. Divide and conquer, just like we did in World War II. We got it down to just half of Hitler's army. In fact, it was the worst half. We really lucked out that he put his better forces north. I'm pausing for a second. It's not an option to just sit there and stare at your screen, you know. Gotta write the problem down and then try. Okay, did you notice that this and this both had an x squared in them? That's really, really common. That's how almost all of them start, because they both have an x squared. And then what's left? Well, I'm going to divide them by x squared. That tells me what's left. And this means there's an x left, and this has a minus, of course. And then this, there's a 4 left. There. Okay, then the other part, super simple. 2 comes out, x minus 4. Coincidence? I think not. Then that's the common factor. Now, technically, I need a plus in here, because that is a positive 2. There was no negative on it. Okay, so now this is the common factor, and it comes to the front. Yes, it could also be in the back, like at the end after the other parenthesis, but I like to put it in the front. And then I have x squared plus 2. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Sweet. Any questions? Okay. That was a lot of people had that right. We have a chance here that everybody's going to get this. So please go to this page. And this is just a reminder of normal factoring. That's harder normal factoring. I always think of this as a 3-step process. It can't just be x and x, though. Do you get I need 6x squared? So either I got to use 6x and x, or 3x and 2x. And I'm not sure which one's right. I honestly don't know which one's right. So I'm going to just try it. And if I multiply it out and it works, then I know I did it right. Next, this is negative. That means there has to be at least one negative. And in fact, because it's at the end, there can't be 2 negatives. It has to be 1 negative and 1 positive. Don't worry about where. We figure that out later. You just put in a plus and a minus. And then it's got to be a 2 and a 1. So it has to be a 2. It has to be a 1, because 2 times 1 makes 2, right? So now I'm not sure if they're in the right spots, though. Maybe the 3x and the 2x have to switch around. I don't know. So what do? You multiply it out and you see what you get. My firsts make 6x squared. Yay. My lasts make negative 2. That's working too. But it's always going to be about these, the outside and the inside. I got a 3x and a negative 4x. Math rewards careful people. Do you get that's negative x? And I really wanted positive x? When it's the opposite of what you wanted, what do? Change the signs. Yes. When it's the opposite of what you wanted, you change these to the opposite. Plus, and then this plus here becomes a minus. And how can you know you're right? Because when you do the outside and the inside, now we get 4x and negative 3x, and that makes positive 1x just like we wanted. You get that? Okay. Now that's the factoring. Now I've been ignoring something that, well, it's not a big deal. It's the easy part at the end. But when they want the solutions, solve it, do you get that means we have to set this equal to 0? That's the easiest equation you've ever done in your life. 2 super easy equations. And this is getting intense, though. Definitely the hardest day that we've had so far. If you're still following, awesome. All right, let's go to this page. Zoom in on these two and turn your iPads my way. Thank you. I just had a couple kids not with me, and now they're with me again. This is good. Stay with me. Now, what's in both of these? 2x? No, they don't both have a 2. X. Tell me what you have left. You're factoring out an x. We're almost done. And then you're going to have a bunch of work time. You're going to have the cell phones out again. And life will be good. I need your full attention for just another 2 more minutes. Got this. All right, Christian, what happens when I divide them both by x, and what do I put inside?
X parentheses 7x plus 2.
7x plus 2 is correct. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Cool. This one, both of them have an x in them. Oh, wait a minute, they don't. Both of them have a y in them. And therefore, if I divide by y, I can see I have x plus z. All right. And here's the factor by grouping kind that we have practiced. This is a gross one. Ugh. In fact, so gross, we're just going to skip it. Go to this one. Go to this one, please. Okay. What's in both of these? Because we're doing the divide and conquer thing. By the way, that negative is on the 4. So when you put your little squiggly line to kind of divide it up, leave the negative on the 4. All right, so what's in both of these? We're almost done. Stay with me. B squared. And if I divide by b squared, I can see what I'd have left. And this would be a b minus, those cancel off, 6. B minus 6. And then over here, I think there's a 4 in both of them, isn't there? But be careful. Minus 4. If you can take out a negative, you should. Now, I know. I totally get how a lot of you would have just put a 4 there. Put a minus 4 there. And what's left if you divide by negative 4 here and here? B minus 6. Coincidence? Of course not. We set it up on purpose so that factors out, and now those go to the front. And I get b minus 6. B is an unfortunate variable. It looks a lot like a 6. And then this and this go here. B squared minus 4. Anybody notice it? Could all be walking down the beach and one person notices the gold doubloon. It's actually true. Sometimes on the beach you'll find actual golden Spanish doubloons. It's rare, but so awesome if you were the person to find one. What did you notice?
The second parentheses can be factored out again.
Yes, this can be factored again. We just practiced that a minute ago. B plus 2, B minus 2. We would never do something like that on the test. Yes, we would for sure do something like that on the test. In fact, I would bet there will be at least 5 kids on the next test that'll just leave this as, or one like it, as their final answer, and they won't notice, ah, crap, it factors again. Okay. Cool. Now, let's start your homework together. Everybody find. I'm going to pause for a second when we find that. And now I've handed out the worksheet. There is a digital version of the worksheet, but I printed them, so I'd like you to just be focused on this piece of paper. Number 1. All I'm doing is rewriting the problem. If you can start, go ahead. So, divide and conquer. Remember, when you're splitting it into 2 parts, that negative goes with the number it's on. Okay? So divide it that way. So what comes out of this part? Common mistake is x. What goes into both of those? X squared. Very good. What goes into both of these? -4. Now, if you're not sure what to put inside, I personally always just go like this. Divide it by the thing you just took out. Divide it by x squared, and you'll be able to tell what's left. X. All right, divide this by -4, because that's what we just took out. And you'll be able to see what goes here and what goes here. If you need help on that, ask. I want to help you, but I don't want to like do all your homework for you. And you're all in the same boat. So the kid right next to you, they also were doing the same exact problem. So talk to them. See if you get the same answer as they do. All right, I will finish this one up. And this one ends up being x plus x squared divided by x squared is 1. A lot of people think that's 0. No. X squared divided by x squared is 1. There needs to be a x plus 1. And in the other one, I'm psychic. It's probably x plus 1. Remember how they're always the same? If you look, the -4's cancel and it's x. And there's 2 negatives, which makes it plus. And 4 divided by 4 is 1. And I knew it was going to be 1 because, like, they're always the same, right? So, from there, you should be able to get it down to 2 parentheses. These guys go together. And it factors again. All right, so I've got it this far. You finish it. Please walk up and ask me for help if you need help. And on Monday, we're going to start reviewing. And your test is either Tuesday or Wednesday. And I'll tell you for sure on Monday.